Have you ever wondered why your car struggles to start on a cold morning? The answer might shock you, and it might be located underneath the hood. Stay tuned for today's episode with Under the Hood with Master Auto Care as we explore the signs your battery might need to be replaced. Welcome back, everyone, on today's episode with Battery Blues, signs your car battery needs to be replaced. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. I'm your host, Oscar Gomez with Master Auto Care. If you guys want to see more of this information, go ahead and give us a like and a follow. Also, if there's a specific topic you would like to learn more about, drop it in the comments and we'll be here to help you out. Also, this is not a one-size-fits-all podcast or episode, and if it doesn't fit your needs, let me know in the comments why you didn't like it. 3 to 4 years, that's the average lifespan of your car's battery. Unfortunately, this is one of the components that most people tend to forget about inside the automobile. The responsibility for the battery is there to not only help us start the car, but it also stores energy from the alternator. As the alternator is charging the system, that energy gets sent over to the battery. Once it's in the battery, it's stored there until we need it for other electronic components, such as your windows, door locks, your air conditioning, your radio. Remember, the alternator is not the primary source of electricity. The alternator's responsibility is to charge the battery. So without a good battery, you're going to suffer from things like hard starts, no starts, intermittent no starts, right? And sometimes it can become annoying. Also, for the fact that if you get stranded somewhere, what if there's nobody there to help you? What if you do have AAA, but it's hours before they can get out to you? So with what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the importance of the car battery and a few things to keep in mind if you suspect your battery might be going out. Let's check it out. Even the fanciest of cars is just a paperweight without a strong battery. Today, we're going to break down the science behind the car battery and how it fuels your car's performance. As I was explaining earlier, the battery's responsibility is to store energy and also provide the energy to run most of the electrical systems within a car. If you guys ever had the issue where you're driving down the road and your electronics begin to shut off, that's typically because the battery has failed. When the battery begins to fail, the alternator is trying to charge it up as best it can. The engine computer is typically watching the alternator's output to see if the alternator is producing more current needed to charge a battery. Over time, as your battery begins to deteriorate, the alternator has to work harder to then charge that particular battery. This is why when a battery gets replaced, it's typically important for the auto repair shop to actually reset the battery life within the computer to let the computer know it got a new battery. If not, what we've seen before is the alternator thinks it's still the old battery, so the alternator is working twice as hard on a new battery, overheats it, and in some cases, they explode. The most common battery you're going to see today would be a lead acid battery. These batteries are typically made up of a plastic case with lead plates, sulfuric acid, and water. All three of these chemical compounds are going to create a chemical reaction, which then begins to produce voltage or electrical energy. Over time, depending on how you use your car, this is going to lead to deterioration of the plates and the electrolytes, which is going to lead to a depletion of energy storage or production from the actual battery. In some instances, we've actually seen a sulfation of those materials within the battery. What ends up happening is you're going to see like a black crusty material form inside the battery, and the lead cell plates can no longer create any energy. So then we get the old famous dead cell. This means you got a dead cell within the battery, and now your battery, instead of being a 12.6, starts dropping and becoming less and less. In a typical lead acid battery, you have 6 2.1 volt cells, which gives us a total of 12.6 volts. If a vehicle drops to 12 volts, the battery's state of charge is actually 0%. The way the battery state of charge works is 100% state of charge, or a fully charged battery, is 12.6 volts. If you got a battery that's at 12.4, that's 75%. A battery that's at 12.2, that's 50%. And a battery at 12, That's zero. You got a completely dead battery. So whenever you bring it into a shop, we always run some tests to make sure your battery's in good shape, and then we recommend a battery replacement whenever you have one or more cells or the battery isn't taking any charge or it's just sulfated when we run a sulfation test. Some newer vehicles have the new technology, which is an AGM, absorbent glass mat battery. What we do here is in between the lead plates, there's going to be a fiberglass mesh that's in between all the plates. This is also a sealed battery. And inside of this battery, the chemical reaction is done and absorbed by those actual fiberglass mats, and that's why we call it an AGM battery. A lot of times you'll see an AGM battery in vehicles that have the battery inside the passenger compartment, and this would be a DOT regulation. The reason why you would see it in the passenger compartment in case of an accident, you don't want lead and acid being projected through the vehicle and hurting the passengers. So with that said, make sure whenever you guys replace your battery, you purchase a battery that fits your particular vehicle and the proper battery number. So this way you can guarantee your safety and operation of your vehicle. Is your once reliable car acting a little strange? Don't be spooked by slow cranks or mysterious click click. Let's explore the common signs of a failing battery so you can take control before you're left stranded. One of the common issues you would see with a battery that's no longer 100% would be a slow crank. A slow crank is a common symptom that you're going to see because the engine takes a little bit longer to turn over and actually start, particularly in colder weather. See, the battery can no longer give you the amount of current to actually get the starter motor to begin to spin. Within an electrical circuit, we got three things. We got voltage, resistance, and current. Voltage is the pressure typically behind or pushing current through a circuit. Resistance is going to be anything that slows the flow of current. And current is what actually does all the electrical work. So if I have a weak battery, when the engine go or when you go to crank the engine, what you're going to hear is you're going to hear the old whoa, whoa type situation. And no, it's not a dog underneath the hood. What's happening here is your battery doesn't have enough juice or current to actually get that starter motor to spin fast enough to get that engine to turn over. Typically, your starter motor has to get the engine up to about 100 to 200 RPM, so this way it can actually kick on and begin to run at around 700 RPM. Now, a lot of times too, as an automotive technician, what I've seen is it's not necessarily the battery that's causing your slow crank. What we've seen over time is what we call the white and crusties. If you pop your hood open and it looks like you're looking at the top of Mount Everest on your battery terminals, that usually indicates you have a lot of corrosion. Because most batteries are typically sealed, even though they might have service caps, around the post they're actually sealed. If you start to get a lot of corrosion, that usually means that those posts are beginning to leak. Over time, the battery itself, the plastic compound, begins to give up. So now it can't hold all that sulfuric acid inside, and we begin to have a chemical reaction because of the dissimilar metals. Once that happens, we're going to start creating that white corrosion, and over time, if it's left there, it begins to actually eat up the actual wire. Now, when it comes into a shop, we usually run a test to test the connection from the post to the actual terminal. And there, if we have a lot of resistance, which slows the flow of current, then we're not going to have enough to get the engine to turn over. So sometimes it might be the battery and sometimes it might be the connection. In bad situations, it's both. So you always make sure if you suspect your battery's low, get your battery tested, but also take a look at your actual battery terminals to make sure they're not white and corroded. Dim lights. That's another telltale sign that you might have inadequate power. This might be resulting because the battery, again, doesn't have enough current to actually sustain all the loads within the vehicle. What's a load? A load in an automotive vehicle is not something you're hauling or something that's in your trunk. A load is actually any electrical component that's using up current within the vehicle. That could be your headlights, your blower motor for your air conditioning. That could be your radio. That could be your kids' iPads that are on a charger. Anything like that is going to be a load within the electrical circuit. So if you do have a weak battery, remember the alternator is trying to do its best to get that battery to where it needs to be. However, if the battery is not taking any more juice, then there's not much it can give out. So if you're suffering from dim lights and you're suffering from electronic components not spinning properly. We've seen people come in complaining about a bad blower motor because their AC is full blast, but it's barely blowing just a hair on their face. And it comes to being it's a weak battery. A quick synopsis of a quick one that we had not too long ago was a European vehicle that came into the shop. When we went ahead and pulled diagnostic trouble codes, we had roughly about 40 to 50 trouble codes within every single module in the car. One of the crazy things, though, is that every module was saying low voltage. When we went to test the battery, we found the battery was pretty much dead. The sad part was that the previous shop was trying to sell this customer a new engine computer. Why? All the truck needed was a brand new battery. We relearned it and it worked perfectly fine. So remember, your battery can cause a lot of weird issues if the battery itself isn't giving enough juice for the whole system. Another common sign would be the old clicking sign. Click, click, right? When you go to start it, and instead of hearing the old dot, 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 boom, starting up, you're going to hear click. Okay. What ends up happening is people usually, if you're old school, you're going to go get a mallet and start tapping that starter to hopefully get the starter to turn over. In most cases, it's not even the starter that's acting up, it's going to be your battery. Remember, if your battery can't give you enough current, nothing's going to work. We've seen vehicles that suffer from low power situations because the fuel pump doesn't get enough current from the battery to turn fast enough to give the engine the fuel it needs to go up a hill. So we need to keep in mind that the battery is going to be producing the amount of energy we need to run all the electronics within an automobile. Now, if your car is anywhere between 10 years old or newer, your car is highly sophisticated and highly electrical. If your battery is not in a good state, you're going to run into a situation where most of your things might not even turn on. I had a close relative of mine who had a situation with one of their minivans. They drove it to the grocery store, they got off. When they came back out, nothing worked. Key wouldn't detect. All they could do was open and close the doors. That's it. They couldn't open, they hit the button, lights on the dash wouldn't come on, headlights wouldn't come on, nothing. They were super confused. What ended up happening was it was a bad battery. That battery was so weak that the module itself shut everything down to prevent anything from getting damaged. Now that's a smart car. Some vehicles might even have a warning light. If your vehicle isn't charging properly, you might even get an indicator on your dash letting you know, hey, right? It's letting you know, dude, there's something going on. Get this checked. Try not to ignore a lot of those. I completely understand life gets in the way. Going to an auto repair shop is not something you want to do. However, if your car is letting you know you got a problem, get it fixed. Remember, if you keep that system running at low performance, you're going to hurt other components. For example, if your battery isn't working very well, your alternator is working harder to get that battery where it thinks it should be. Now you're wearing down your alternator, which is a lot more expensive than a battery, simply because you keep ignoring that reminder on your dash. Besides the white and crusties, another thing you want to keep an eye out for would be an inflated battery. If you notice that the plastic case of your car battery has got it rounded and it's inflated, that means that that battery is gone. You need to get that battery replaced. If you keep running that car with that type of battery, you can actually cause that battery to blow up. I don't know about you, but having plastic, lead, and acid shrapnel flying into my passenger compartment, especially with my family in the car, doesn't sound like much fun to me. Make sure if you guys do a visual inspection and you notice the battery case is no longer flat and is becoming inflated, get that battery replaced ASAP. Also, as a good reminder, there are some battery manufacturers, unfortunately, I don't want to say any names, but there is one manufacturer in particular that leaks quite a bit. They used to be a really good battery that I would recommend quite often. Unfortunately, that battery no longer checks the checkbox for me, and I don't recommend it anymore. You might notice it because of a specific color they use, but if that battery comes out to you or you have one of those batteries, keep a close eye on it because they leak quite a bit. Remember, plastic cannot carry electricity. So if you take a voltmeter from the negative side of the battery post and you put the other one on the plastic case, and you're reading anything over 200 millivolts, that means you're leaking acid out of the battery and that battery needs to get cleaned. In most cases, when we see 4, 5, 6 volts, we're going to recommend replacing the battery. If you're leaking that much voltage out, even if I clean it off, it's going to happen again. That battery is probably not venting properly, so your best option is to just go ahead and replace it. Batteries don't last forever, but we can definitely maximize their lifespan. We'll discuss preventive maintenance and the safe way to jumpstart your dead battery. Remember, that's only a temporary fix, and choosing the right replacement to keep your car running completely strong. Prevention is key. As an auto repair shop, we tend to run into customers who get kind of upset when we recommend a battery service. See, most people think that, what are you going to service on a battery? What we do when we service a battery is we remove your terminals, we clean out your terminals, we go ahead and lubricate them. We use a special compound called Stabilant 22. If you're not sure what that is, a little bottle about this big costs the shop about $90 to $100. We add a couple of drops of compound on your connections, we reassemble, and we torque them down. What that's going to help you do is that's going to give you a better solid connection, and it's going to prevent any type of crusties down the road, which crusties lead to resistance. Resistance leads to less current draw. Less current draw leads to no cranking or the old clicking. So if you're at a shop and somebody recommends a battery service, it might be something you would probably want to take a look at. I would suggest asking the shop if they can show you the battery terminals so you can take a look. What test did they run to determine that it needs that service? We run a voltage drop test to verify if it needs a service, and we also do a visual inspection. This way, you know for sure if you actually need it. Oh, and by the way, we provide you with pictures of how we tested it and the condition of it, so this way you know we're not just pulling your strings. If you want to do this on your own, you can definitely buy the cleaner to do it. Just make sure that you're aware that when you remove your battery terminals, you might have to relearn some stuff. Door locks, windows, radio, your radio stations, sometimes on some Toyotas, even the throttle pedal. So if you do it at home, just keep in mind that you might have to reset some of the features within your car. Now, I've heard from people that you can use Coca-Cola. I don't do that. We use chemicals to make sure it's done properly. But if you do use the Coke method and it works, put it in the comments. I'd like to know. When it comes to jump starting, I'll be the first one to tell you, avoid jumper cables at all costs. What's happening is, let's say for example, you're running your vehicle is computerized and you're trying to be the nice person and help somebody else out who at the grocery store needs a jump. Well, your vehicle now has to produce enough energy to run itself and jumpstart the other vehicle, which can lead to failures on your vehicle to try to help the other person. What I would strongly recommend is at Costco, Sam's Club, or even Amazon, you can get those small portable jump starter packs for about $40 to $60. Now, what you would do is you would keep that in your vehicle about once a month, pull it out, charge it up, and keep it in the trunk of your car. This way, if somebody were to ask you, hey man, do you have some jumper cables? I don't, but I got a jumper box, which is much better. You go and jumpstart the car, and they'll be on their merry way. This is preventing damage to your car for trying to be the nice person. What I do if my jump box isn't working, I'll just call AAA and I'll use one of my tows to help somebody out. I believe in karma, so sooner or later it's going to help me. Now, if you are going to be using jumper cables, always start with negative first and negative last. If you are going to use jumper cables, just remember that in an automobile, electricity flows from positive to negative. So go ahead and connect the positives first and then the negatives last. Then once the car starts up, remove the negatives first and the positives last. This is going to prevent arcing. Why do you want to prevent arcing or sparks? Is when you're charging a battery, they create hydrogen. Hydrogen is a very explosive gas. So make sure when you guys are disconnecting, you don't create any sparks because your battery can blow up. Not saying it will, it definitely can. Your typical battery lifespan would be about 3 to 5 years or 3 to 4 years, just depending on where you live, how you drive your car, long trips, short trips, and if you have any electrical issues with your particular car. When it comes time to replace your battery, make sure that whatever battery you put into the car is the right size and it's the right cold cranking amp rating as the one you're pulling out. If you're not sure, visit your local auto parts and they'll be able to match you to the right kind of battery. When it comes to the batteries, try to avoid the least expensive, and you don't have to go to those $500, $600 batteries. Just keep in mind the mid-level ones are probably going to be your best bet. Also, too, I have seen some people go for these rebuilt ones. I'm not a big fan of that because typically those batteries are probably just topped off with some acid, cleaned up, and then put back in your car. I understand that they're a lot less expensive, but you're going to waste more money in the long run having to replace that multiple times and also leading to further breakdowns. We actually had a vehicle from one of our students that came in. As we were testing his vehicle, he was on his third battery and second alternator. Well, come to find out, he was using these rebuilt batteries, and those batteries were so bad, they kept taking the alternators out. So we had to go with a factory Ford alternator and a brand new battery, and that took care of all his issues. So make sure whenever you guys do those replacements, I get it, it is kind of expensive. However, if you make that investment now, it's going to last you 3 to 5 years as long as everything's properly maintained. Extreme temperatures are your battery's enemy. Here, we're going to uncover some easy tips like parking in the shade and keep your battery cool and functioning optimally. One thing you want to do, and whenever possible, avoid short trips. Now, I get it, sometimes they're inevitable, but most of the time, if you can, try to avoid them as much as you can. Reason being is you didn't get to recharge the battery to its full potential on such a short trip. But a short trip would be if you're literally pulling out of your driveway and going 4 driveways up and reparking and shutting your car off. Well, you used a lot of energy to start the car up in the first place. You weren't able to recharge it within those couple of feet that you actually drove. Now, if they're inevitable, just keep in mind every so often, try to do a long trip on the car so this way you can get that battery fully charged. Also, aside from the battery, short trips are not really good when it comes to your internal combustion engine. So if you do run your vehicle on very short trips, try to keep the engine on for a little bit longer. And then also try to give yourself a long trip in between all those short ones to clean the engine out and the exhaust. So this way you don't build up a lot of carbon inside of the engine. If you're anything like me that lives in Southern California where we see 110, 115 in the summer, if you live in Southern California and you see temperatures in the hundreds in the summer, make sure you park your car in a shady area. And no, I don't mean in somewhere where you're going to walk out and your car's on bricks. I mean underneath some shade, so this way your car stays nice and cool. Reason why is the hotter it is, the shorter the lifespan is going to be of your car's battery. Remember, where's your battery located? In the engine compartment. Your engine can reach temperatures of 210 degrees. Then you have the ambient temp, and all of that is surrounding your battery. The hotter the battery gets, the more you're lessening the lifespan of that particular battery. So try to keep it cool as much as you possibly can. Turn off lights and electronics. Whenever possible, if you're not using any of the electrical systems, shut them off. This way, you're not loading the battery more than you really need to. If you're driving down the road during the day and you got your headlights on, go ahead and shut them off. You're draining more energy from the battery, you're making the electrical system work harder, and you're shortening the lifespan of your battery. If you don't need it, turn it off, right? If it's 55 degrees outside and you got the AC on, I want to turn that off, right? So kind of keep in mind, if you can save some electrical energy, do that by turning off components so it's not draining your battery. And you're going to hate me for this, the white and crusties. Keeping your battery terminals clean. The more you can do that, the better flow you're going to get of electrical current from your battery, and that's going to prolong the life of the automotive battery. So try to make sure that you guys constantly keep your terminals clean and keep getting a battery service whenever possible. Also, if for some reason you want to charge your battery, do yourself a favor and get a smart charger. See, a lot of times we find these old school chargers that got 3 settings, which is 5 amps, 10 amps, and 225 amps. What you want to do with particularly now with newer cars is use a smart charger. What a smart charger does is it's going to slowly start incrementing the charge, decharge the battery, and recharge it. So it's doing this with your battery cells. So this way it can get them to an optimal charge. What a smart charger can also do is if your battery's sulfated and it's not taking a charge anymore, it can actually revive it. So this is why a smart charger comes into play versus using the old school charger. right? But again, whatever you can afford is what you would want to use. We've now tackled the signs of a failing battery and how to keep yours healthy. Now, if your car is exhibiting any of these warning signs, make sure you get it checked by a qualified technician so this way you can get that fixed before you end up stranded. Now, if you found this information useful, do me a favor, give us a like and a follow. And then also let me know in the comments any other subjects or topics you would like us to talk about. And if you didn't like it, that's perfectly fine. Let me know in the comments what you didn't like, and I'll see if I can change that for you. If this was very useful, share this with your entire crew so this way everybody can know what the lifespan is and how to keep your battery good and when it's time for a battery replacement. I once again want to thank you guys for joining us here under the hood with Master Auto Care, your host, Oscar Gomez, and I'll see you guys on the next one.